So in this video, I'm going to be talking about how a clinician should perform the ETDRS visual acuity test, and then also how you as the proctor can judge the performance on this test. So just kind of running through the rubric itself, some of the first things that the clinician should do is explain the purpose of the test to their patient. And so this could be something very simple, saying something along the lines of this test is going to see how well you see letters at distance. It's going to give us an idea of your refractive condition and what kind of changes we might need to make with low vision devices. That may be a little bit complicated. It could be just as simple as this test will allow us to see how well you see at distance. After they have explained the purpose of the test, it's important for them to note how to do the test, or how the patient should do the test. And so this was fairly straightforward. The clinician would just say, something like, I'm going to have you read the letters on that chart, starting at the top and then working your way down until you can no longer see the letters. It's important for you to try as hard as you can. It's okay to guess at these letters. You're not getting penalized for any wrong responses. So for the purpose of this test, the patient should be occluded with one eye. So they're going to eventually test both. So it's really the clinician's choice which eye they occlude first, but they should occlude one eye. As far as testing conditions are concerned, they should have the room lights all the way on. So overhead lights on. Stand lamp isn't necessary, but they should have full room illumination. For this test, they should initially place the ETDRS chart all the way against the wall opposite the patient. So the chart is set somewhere around 4 meters. It's not exact because of our somewhat short exam room length, but it's close enough to 4 meters for testing purposes. They don't need to measure this distance, but placing it close to the wall is considered 4 meters. If the patient is unable to see at least 7 letters, so starting on the top line, they should be able to read the entire top line and a couple of letters into the second line down from the top. If they are not able to do this, the clinician should know that they need to have the test distance. And so if it was at 4 meters, then they need to move it up to 2 meters. If it was at 2 meters, it needs to be moved to 1 meter. So hopefully 2 meters will be good enough for testing purposes. If they have to, the clinician should know that they can move the test or move the chart up to 1 meter. As the patient is reading down the chart, the clinician should press them or push them down the chart, encouraging them to guess, effectively trying to get them to see the smallest optotypes possible in order to check and see what their maximum visual acuity is. There's no set stop point, as in, if they miss 2 letters in a row or 3 letters in a row, then that's the end of the test. However, the clinician will know when it's approximately time, just like whenever you're testing a patient with Snellen acuity. If they are only able to get 2 or 3 on the line, you can ask them to see if they can see any on the next line, so on and so forth. If they can't, that's an appropriate stopping point for the test. Once they've completed the test with one eye, they just need to repeat or switch and repeat it with the other eye. So one of the things about the ETDRS test, and I'm going to share my screen here to allow you to see the ETDRS chart over here. One thing to note about the ETDRS chart is that every letter is worth the same amount. So each letter is worth 0.02 logmar, and that's not a number that you need to remember, but for grading purposes. But each letter is worth the same amount. So let's just say, for instance, here real quick, let me create a line here and make it something that's easy to see. So for instance, our patient read all 5 letters on this line. They read 4 letters on this line. Let's say that they missed the last one here. And then on the next line, they were able to read all the letters except for this one. Okay. So we're going to keep going here. The patient's moving down the chart. They were able to read all the letters except for that one. and that one, and this one here. Okay. So let's just say that the patient got to this point and said, I can't see any letters on this line at all. Okay. So normally, if you were to do this with Snellen and Acuity, you would probably look at the visual acuity over here on the side. Let me scroll down. And you would say, oh, this is 12.5 M. The test was conducted at 4 meters, and so it would be 4 over 12.5 M minus 1. However, for the ETDRS chart, it's not necessary to do plus or minus letters in some circumstances. So let me show you what I mean by that. Since each letter is worth the same amount, if they miss some letters further down the chart but get others, you can effectively substitute out those letters with some of the ones that they got further down. Oftentimes, what I've instructed the students to do, and what is often easier, is just to count the letters that they got right. So if we say they got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. So they got 25 letters correct. They missed 5 as they were moving down the chart. Each letter has 5, or each line has 5 letters in it. So we go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. And in this case, it's as if they got this entire line correct. And we were able to substitute all of these out with various letters that they got correct, even down here. So in this case, instead of saying 4 over 12.5 M minus 1, as we did before, what we would instead do is come over here and we say, well, because they missed 5 letters throughout the entire test, they got 25 letters total correct. We would count down to 25 and we would say, okay, this is the 16M line. Test was conducted at 4 meters. So the visual acuity will be 4 over 16M. Speaking of M notation, it is important for the students to utilize this M acuity. In the residence guide, I did say that it was okay if they use Snellen. Some students will want to calculate the exact visual acuity. If you have any students that do that, it would be important for you as the proctor to write down the number of letters that they got correct, that the patient got correct, and the test distance, and then speak with either myself or Dr. Ma, and we can give you the exact visual acuity, and then you can compare it to the students, what they wrote down, and see if that's correct. So the students have been instructed, though, for ease of testing, to go ahead and just put things in M notation. So let me erase some of this real quick, and let's go through another example here. So let's say, for instance, that the patient was reading the chart, and let's just make it easier on ourselves to say they got down to this line here, and they were able to see one more on this. So they got all of these 5, 10, 15, 20 optotypes plus 1. So this one isn't as neat or clean as before. And so in this case, it would be appropriate for them to say plus 1. And so the visual acuity in this one, let me zoom in here, is 20M. And so if the tests were conducted at 4 meters, then it would be 4 over 20M plus 1. So with ETDRS and M notation, the way that we record the visual acuities is similar to the way that we do it with the lay and numbers chart. So for instance, if the test is conducted at 4 meters, the top line or the top number is 4. It's 4 over whatever optotype size that the patient read. If they were able to read the 16M optotype at 4 meters, it's 4 over 16M. The nice thing about M notation is that you don't have to do any conversion if you have to change the distance of the chart to the patient. The only thing that you do is put a different distance in there. So for instance, instead of 4 over 16M, if the tests were moved up to 2 meters, then you would say 2 over 16M. So in this case, if the tests were conducted at 4 meters, it would be 4 over 16M plus 1. I'm sorry, 4 over 20M plus 1. If it were conducted at 2 meters, it would be 2 over 20M plus 1. So the point is regarding the ETDRS chart, it's just as simple as saying the distance at which the test was conducted over the optotype size that they were able to read, or the minimum optotype size they were able to read. If the test was at 1 meter and they read 16M, it's 1/16M for the visual acuity. If the test were then moved to 4 meters and miraculously the patient was still able to read 16M, it would be 4/16M. So all it is the distance over the optotype size. Again, if you have any questions about this, please email me or ask me, and I can hopefully clarify that a little bit more for you. Moving on to recording the acuities. So let me share my screen here again. And let's chat about recording the acuities briefly. So just like with lay and numbers, the area within Revolution that we use to record acuities is going to be under the low vision inference skills tab, and specifically the low vision chair skills. Now, depending upon the patient's refractive condition, corrected or uncorrected, that will denote the appropriate spot to record these acuities. So let's just say, for instance, the patient was uncorrected, and we were testing their right eye. And so we would select 4 here if the test was conducted at 4 meters, and then we would try to find the correct optotype size. One thing to note is that Revolution, and more specifically the sandbox, which we're using for the proficiency, does not have all the optotypes available. And also you can note that none of these say M after them. So it's okay if the student just selects one of these. So say, for instance, it was 4/20M, but that's not available here in the dropdown. So they could just select 20, and that would be okay. If it's not available, for instance, we were using one example where the patient was able to read that 16M optotype, then what you would do is just record it in the notes. And so they could put something along the lines of ETDRS, and the right eye, and say the test was conducted at 4 meters, you put 4/16M. Let's just use the previous example before, and let's say that they were able to read 20M and an additional letter. So in that case, we put 4/20M plus 1. And so it would just be as simple as that, recording the visual acuities for this test. The next point, or the next area of the proficiency, the student is responsible for telling you 2 reasons why the ETDRS chart is superior to Snellen. They may not remember this during the proficiency, so if they forget, it's okay to prompt them. They shouldn't lose any points for that. But they should say something along the lines of that the ETDRS has a uniform progression of optotypes as you move down the chart. Although all the optotypes are worth the same amount, there is equal crowding between the letters and between the lines. And the last one being that the letters that are used in the ETDRS chart are Sloan letters, meaning that they all have relatively equal difficulty. And so they should tell you a couple of those reasons. If they tell you something that you're unsure of, please contact myself or Dr. Ma, and we can tell you if it's correct or not. The last section of the ETDRS chart, or ETDRS visual acuity test, is just if the test was conducted in a professional manner. And so I'll leave that up to your discretion. But if the student was able to get most things in order, we tend to be a little flexible on those points. So again, your discretion. But if you do mark any areas off, please let me know why. As far as the ETDRS is concerned, that's really it for this portion of the proficiency. And I will see you on the next video.